Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the council chambers, or school committee chambers, as you will. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Lowell School Committee. We have a number of youngsters in the audience. We welcome you and their parents. Before we'd like to start the meeting, please rise and let us salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please kindly call a roll?
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Rostikowicz?
Here.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
Mr. Gendron?
Here.
Mayor Elliott?
Here.
6 present, 1 absent.
Okay, if there's no objection, we have a number of young students here in the audience that we'd like to recognize on the spotlight on excellence. I'd like to entertain a motion to take that item out of order by Mr. Larry, seconded by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Again, welcome students of the Daly School. Nice to see you again. We've brought you here tonight, the superintendent has, to recognize you for your accomplishment and being the winners of the 2015 Knowledge Bowl. With that, I'd like to recognize the superintendent of schools.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are pleased and proud to announce the Daly School as the Knowledge Bowl champions of 2015. Congratulations, Daly School. You did a phenomenal job. I was lucky as a judge that evening to know early on how talented they were in the math round, and so the night continued. It was a close round, and as always, the Knowledge Bowl is our pride and joy in Lowell, where we compete against each other for the fun of seeing, you know, the knowledge that our kids can bring forward. This team will also participate in the intra-district Knowledge Bowl in the beginning of June, where there are now 5 teams. We have Dracut, Billerica, Tewksbury, Lowell, and Tingsboro that will come for the inter-district Knowledge Bowl. So we know that you're going to really be continuing your legacy. So with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Ms. Carolyn Rocheleau. She's the coordinator of special programs, and Knowledge Bowl is something that she plans and oversees. So Carolyn?
Great. Well, thank you, first of all, for having us here tonight. We couldn't be prouder. Since 1988, Lowell Public Schools has hosted the Catherine Patoglose Regional Lowell Knowledge Bowl, and this year was no exception in being extremely exciting. I could not have worked with a nicer group of students who were so both intelligent, respectful. We are so proud of them. They are truly our shining stars of our district. I want to thank the school committee for their continued support, as well as coming and serving as judges for us on the nights. And I would welcome you and invite you all to come on June 1st and June 2nd at the Stocklosa School to see these students take on our surrounding town teams. And I have no doubt that our students will do very well. So although we are here to congratulate the Daly School, I also want to acknowledge the Pine Arch School, which took 2nd place this year, and the Wang School, which took 3rd place. And all did extremely well and have nothing to be sorry for. They all did very well. It was a very close match to the end. However, the Daly team did prevail in the end, and we were very proud of them. At this time, I'd like to introduce Liam Skinner, principal of the Daly School, who will introduce you to the coaches and the students.
Mr. Mayor and members of the school committee, thank you for this opportunity to address you. And I'd like to thank you for supporting the Knowledge Bowl competition. I think as a school district and a learning institution that it's very appropriate that we have a competition where we celebrate kids' learning, celebrate students who can take joy in being knowledgeable and showing how smart they are. And your support of it is working, because over the last several years we've had various schools winning the Knowledge Bowl competition, and this year the competition was very, very fierce. Many schools did very, very well, and so lots of students that you are inspiring to work hard and be knowledgeable and be smart. So I am particularly proud of these students at the Daly School, and I can tell you that they worked very, very hard as part of their secret of success. They read a lot, they learned a lot about current events, and they took pride in what they were doing. They are a credit, I'd like to say, to their parents, who are their first teachers, and very much families who are very proud of these young boys and girls. And they're a credit to their teachers at the Daly School and teachers they even had in elementary school. And we take great pride in their achievement. So they are also very much a product and a credit of their coaches. So we have two wonderful coaches at the Daly School who you won't find more dedicated coaches anywhere in a sport or in any other event. And they are Miss Marcia Downey and Miss Karen Miranda. Please come on.
Hi, good evening. I'm Karen Miranda, and this is Marcia Downey. We're both 8th grade teachers at the Daly Middle School, and we've been coaching together, I think, for 5 years now. We've come in second place 4 years in a row, and now we're really excited to have come in first, and we couldn't have done it with a greater bunch of students. Many of these students have been on the team since they were in 6th grade, and they have been working so hard this year, putting in a lot of extra time, scouring the newspapers. We had math experts coming in. They wanted to learn more math so they could improve. They'd ask for extra practices. They come in at lunch and want to practice. They email us asking questions. They really wanted to make the school proud and to make themselves proud, and they did. So we'd like to recognize the students on the 2015 winning Knowledge Bowl team. Down at the end, maybe you can stand up when your name is called, Samantha Vega. We have Zoe Seschel, Sophia Sigliano, Dylan McHugh, Josiah Belfiore, Derek Allen, Timothy McCabe, Andrew Pollard, our captain, David Savoy, and 8th grader Colin Cusick with our trophy. Congratulations. Thank you guys for all of your support. We also like to mention we have one of our up-and-coming players, Abby Savoy. She's been practicing with us, and she's getting ready for next year, so we'd like to say hi to Abby as well. Thank you guys very much.
Well, we want to thank you. I have to tell you, it was a very close match, and I started sweating a little bit when I saw how close it was right till the end. Was it 5 points? It was 15 right down to the buzzer. And I also want to thank the coaches as a judge. I was so impressed with the breadth of knowledge that all of these three teams knew and brought to the competition at all three schools, having gone into the classroom for the math exercise. It was really very impressive how they worked together, how they communicated, and credit to the coaches, the teachers, the coordinators, and the schools and parents. I can just say the best part about being a judge is that you gave us the answers, because if we didn't have the answers, we would have been in some serious, serious trouble. So with that, members of the school committee, Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, want to congratulate the Daly School students for your fine effort and championship this year. It's wonderful that we can celebrate academic excellence down here in the school committee chamber before the meeting, so thanks for coming down. I don't know if you noticed, but I wore my Daly School tie today, just in honor of you guys, so good job.
Anyone else? Ms. Rosigowitz?
Thank you. I'd just like to congratulate the team. You did an outstanding job, and really, truly, as Mr. Skinner had indicated, it's truly a testament to their families, to their teachers, and to the school itself. I'm a little biased. Both of my children are currently in or have graduated from the Daly, so very proud of them. Thank you.
So did the team want to come up? Here's a real testament. Do you want to come up to the podium and say a few words? This is your chance to get on. Well, you're on television, but come right around the podium. Everybody want to come up? Because when you watch the rerun, you'll say, wow, there I am. Or just the captains? Does the rest of the team want to come up? Come on. You are a team. We want you to the team. All right, now who's going to talk?
Hi, my name is Timothy McCabe. I'm an 8th grader at the Daily School. I just wanted to say congratulations to my team. Really good job, and yeah, we did a really good job, and I'm hoping our 7th graders can carry on the legacy and do us good next year.
Excellent. Excellent job. Very well said. Very well put.
My name's Colin Cusick. I'm an 8th grader this year. I've been on the team since 6th grade. For 3 years I've been on this team. I've known the agony of defeat, coming in 2nd place. First 2 years, finally knowing the overwhelming feeling of victory, finally winning this, taking it back home to the Daily. And I've loved every minute of it. This is seriously one of the greatest experiences you can have as a middle schooler. And to anybody questioning it or deciding whether or not to even attempt to join your team or try out, you absolutely should, because this is a great experience, one that I will keep with me for the rest of my life.
Outstanding. Very good job.
My name is Andrew Pollard. I'm an 8th grader. Been on the team since 7th grade. I just want to thank you for letting us come here. And I just want to talk a little bit about the actual experience on the stage, that just the adrenaline that rushes through you, that when you get that first answer right, you just keep going. I mean, it's great. I know for a lot of us, for all of us, I mean, we have all at least gotten one question right. It just feels great. Thank you again.
Great job. Great job. Mr. Captain?
My name is David Savoy, and I'm an 8th grader. And it has been my honor to be a part of this team since 5th grade, or technically 6th grade, but I've been with the team since 5th grade. And I just want to thank our coaches for being awesome coaches and leading us to victory.
Well said.
Hi, my name's Dylan McHugh, 8th grade. I've been on the team since, well, this year, but I've been asked for as long back as I can remember, either 6th grade or 5th grade, one of the two. But anyways, I've always been really hesitant on joining, but this year I did finally come around, show up to the tryout, and I did pass, but still a little hesitant because, well, I personally say I have stage fright. Like, my heart is racing right now. But I am genuinely happy I did join. I enjoy the practices, I enjoy everything we go over, and I'm happy to have said I'm part of the Knowledge Bowl team that made first place. Thank you.
Great job. All set, ladies? You're good? Okay, thank you very much. Yeah,
Mayor?
let's get together, we'll get a picture.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
maybe they'd like to have a picture with you?
Sure, if they want to come on up. Oh, I'll come down. We did take a picture, but. One more time. Make sure we don't block anybody. So come on up. Madam Superintendent, you want to? With that, we'll move on to the regularly scheduled agenda. First item we have on the agenda is a public hearing for the Inter-District School Choice Program. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, annually, the district has to, before June 1st, actually, vote to see if we were going to allow school choice in our district. It is my recommendation as a superintendent of schools to not recommend school choice, as our space is at a minimum. We do not have the space to allow that choice program in Lowell, and I need the vote of the committee to approve my recommendation.
Okay, well, this requires a public hearing, so we'll now open up this portion of the meeting for the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in favor of this school choice program. Is there anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like now open up this portion of the public hearing for anyone wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Seeing none, we will close that portion of the public hearing as well. What is the wish of the body? Well, we should bring in the... Apparently there's a vote under new business. I make a motion to suspend the rules that we may as well bring the vote in now, right? Motion suspended by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So it's item number 28. There's a vote of the inter-district school choice. It's under new business. Madam Superintendent, I think you just went through the discussion of it, right? Communication, please be advised that as required under state school choice law, each school committee must annually review and adopt a position regarding the inter-district school choice following a public hearing. Therefore, a public hearing will be held at the beginning of the meeting. On April 1st at 6:30, the committee will adopt its position following the public hearing. I will be recommending for the 2015-2016 school year that the Lowell School Committee once again reject participating in the inter-district school choice program. The rationale is continued lack of space and impact of projected enrollment to house our own students at all grade levels.
Make a motion to adopt the superintendent's recommendation.
Motion by Mr. Leary to adopt a recommendation as presented, seconded by Ms. Ross Sikowitz. Discussion on this issue? Roll call.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent. Excuse me, approved.
Motion approves. We'll move on to the next section of the agenda. We have a special meeting, an update on the negotiations, UTL, LSA, SEIU litigation, and collective bargaining immediately following the regularly scheduled school committee meeting. Entertain a motion to delay this item to the end of the agenda by Ms. Rosikowicz, excuse me, second by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, the purpose of the special meeting is to discuss as an executive session, public discussion, which would be detrimental to the city and the school committee. Moving on to the next item, we have minutes of approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled school committee meeting of Wednesday, March 18th. Move to approve by Ms. Rosikowicz, excuse me, seconded by Mr. Gendron. Discussion on those minutes? Edits? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Minutes are accepted and placed on file. Moving on to the next section of the agenda, we have permission to enter. Excuse me, permission to enter on April 1st. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Aramark Educational Services, LLC, in the amount of $3,769,138 to amend the existing contract to provide for the continuation of the management services to the Lowell Public Schools for the operation of the district school food service program in the 2015-2016 school year. The funding will be provided by the school department budget food service revolving fund.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Discussion on this, Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the superintendent, so this comes from the Food Service Revolving Fund. So this is an expected expenditure, right? This isn't something that was unexpected.
Madam Superintendent?
Yes, this is The annual revolving fund, this is something that over time, we have to put this out. This is the initial outlay. And then we have found over time, and the reason why we did switch to Aramac Corporation is that it becomes self-funding, and it's a profit-making endeavor. And I don't know if Mr. Lang has more to add, but that's basically how it goes.
And just to follow up on that, does Aramac, do they do food service for the entire district?
Yes, they do.
And do we ever do, sort of quality checking or taste testing, anything like that on the food at the various schools? Get feedback from the schools and the students about the quality of the food?
We've had regular meetings where we do have check-ins with children. There are sometimes surveys that occur. I'll ask Mr. Lang what's gone on this year, but when we do have, there's usually a food service type of a meeting in finance sometime during the year where we talk about food checks and whatnot. We've reviewed the nutritional guidelines, how they've changed, but there is some survey factors which Ms. Lagasse has told us about, but I don't know if there are more details.
So the reason I bring that up is in a couple of my recent school visits, I've gotten some negative feedback about the quality of the food in some of our elementary schools. And I'm just wondering if we follow up on those things, if we survey regarding the quality of the food and ask Aramac to take action on it.
I believe, do you know more?
Yeah, I can address a little bit for you. We do surveys twice a year with the staff. It is difficult at the elementary level to elicit proper responses to survey feedback, but we do attempt to do that. Aramac actually does have a nutritionist on board that works to put the menus together with the schools. If we ever do hear significant concerns, or even just around menu selection, choice, and things of that fact, the team from Aramac will go out, will meet with the school, and possibly put together certain offerings that are more conducive to the kids' likings in that particular school. So there is a recourse and a mechanism to do that. If you've heard of particular concerns and you want to forward it my way, I'm happy to look into them and see if they've been addressed. They've always been very responsive to any time we've asked them to go in and take a look at things.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Ms. Rice-Sigowitz.
I know I'm regenerating prior complaints that I myself have received and passed on, and I know that there are surveys that are done, at least in middle school and high school, and there was most recently an online survey that was put out over various social media avenues, gathering feedback from students with regard to their feelings and about the food that they're served each day. And I'd be curious to see those results. It would be nice to have for us, for our own benefit, because we're the ones actually approving these contracts or, bringing them forward and spending a lot of money. And my concern is you're giving food to kids, and if it's not what they like, it's going straight into the garbage. And it's not an option. They can't just get the sandwich and not get the milk. And we're charging for that full meal, and we're wasting a lot of food, which again goes back to my issue with the fact that we haven't really addressed our food waste issue and that impact on our budget. But I think it's an honest discussion to have ongoing, because if the kids aren't going to eat it, it's going to go in the garbage, and they're going to come home, and we're paying for it, and they're going to come home and eat us out of house and home, starving. So, which is not an issue, but they're starving and they go in the entire day without eating, which is a real problem. Thanks.
Mr. Leary.
Just to follow up on that, I think first we need to have the survey results. I think we spoke about that last year as well. I think we should have the facility subcommittee meeting, maybe a joint with student services. The waste issue is a significant problem. I didn't know that was still ongoing. I think that's something we need to touch base with our mark. If that's is still a pending issue, that's not, we need to address it, because it's costing money and it's obviously not a positive thing all around. One of the things, though, I think the problem we get into is, one, a lot of the menus, it's based on federal guidelines, and the second menu, it is cafeteria food, and we could go into a higher realm of food that would cost more money and probably end up running the program in the red. Those are decisions we can make as a committee. That's something we can definitely do. I think that's one of the problems regarding a lot of the different options that we run into, is that that it's going to cost you more to do that, and that's part of the issue. But I think we definitely need to take a look at it, especially as we're renewing, going into another year. What were the positives? What were the negatives? We had an audit that came back a little while ago regarding some of the parents who, some of the, you know, are in arrears regarding making payments. Some are probably in hardship that we need to move into the other programs to make payments. Some are just simply not paying it. And unfortunately, the audit team said basically we need to address it. So it's probably a good time as we go through the budget to start making that part of the discussion, and with a variety of different issues that need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larry.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Conway?
Thank you. Through you to the superintendent. Is there a surveys that go out periodically or twice a year or once a year to the parents asking what their children think about the lunches, school lunches, and whether they feel they're nutritious, whether they feel that it's something that they want and that they're going to consume? Is there any?
Well, as Mr. Lang just told us, there are annual surveys. I'm not sure if they go to families as well as students. Do you know that? Anybody can fill them out, so I guess they're online surveys.
I'm sorry, one more time?
There are two surveys a year that are open to children and parents, and those are the survey results that you're talking about.
And how are these surveys given out?
Electronically, I believe.
Electronically, okay. Do you think that, what was the response on it?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can bring more information for the next meeting if you would like that.
Well, how many years have we been giving these surveys out?
Well, we've had Aramark for what, 5 years? 4?
So in the past,
5 years.
if we don't know the number this year, in the last couple years, what were the roughly how many surveys were actually filled out by the parents? Do you know?
I do not know off the top of my head, Mr. Conway.
Okay.
Don't know.
Right. You know, I think that might be a good idea to take a look at, because we have 14,000 students, and I'm just wondering, and I agree with my colleagues that the parents that I talk with, they're not very happy with the food that is being served, and if we're taking the food and they're throwing it away, we're wasting money, and I think it was my colleague. Mr. Leary was just saying that, you know, we have to have a subcommittee meeting and then bring all this information up. But I think that if we do have that subcommittee meeting, it might be a good idea to have that data available on what the response were from parents in let's say the last 3 or 4 years, because then I think it might give us a better understanding of how many parents actually first of all, weighing in on it. If there are very few parents weighing in, then we have to take a look at another avenue to contact these parents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Further discussion? Entertain a motion to approve by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Genron. Roll call.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Excuse me, still under permission to, that is the last permission to enter. We'll move into next section, which is memorials. We have 3 memorials. Okay, just wanted to get the name correct. First one is Raul Massasesi from former Butler Middle School student. We have Violet O'Keefe, mother of Butler school teacher, Jerry Lynn Menonopoulos, and Laura Lee school tutor Terry Hoffman. We also have General John Blatzos, grandfather of Butler school teacher Matthew Blake. Could we all please rise for a moment of silence, and could we darken the chambers? May they rest in peace. number of motions tonight. We're moving on to the motion section of the agenda. First motion of the evening by Mr. Conway. Because of the frequent inclement weather, spring weather, ask the superintendent to meet with the athletic director and headmaster to develop a plan to address the needs of the preseason spring sports. It should include strategies for alternative practice locations that will ready our athletes for their season. Second by Mr. Gendron. Mr. Conway.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think it's pretty straightforward. I think that in the last few years, we certainly have had some challenging weather for our sports, and we don't necessarily run into that with the other two seasons. And again, I think that certainly in the past we had cold weather during the spring season. However, it's much more complicated. This particular year had to be very unusual. I drive by some of the parks right now and some of the fields, and there's still quite a bit of snow on many of them. So one of the issues that we have is that the budget, there's a certain amount of money obviously in our athletic budget, and it seems as though what I have been told that when we get to the spring sports, that budget for the most part is pretty well used up. And I think it might be something that we could take a look at, because if we've got sports like baseball and softball and tennis and the track, and again, you have to be careful on how we remove that snow. But I think what's important is that many of the schools that participate in our league anticipate this now, and therefore they use certain facilities around. They rent them so that they're out there with their coaches, and they start their sports off basically on time, even though their fields might not be ready. And I think they get kind of a leg up on everyone else. Well, I should say a leg up on Lowell High School. And I think that we need to compete, obviously, and we need to make sure that the sports are available for our students, because I think we all know, and we've said it many times on the floor here. I mean, it's a great, when you talk about sports, it's a great way of preventing school dropout and so forth, and I think that many of our students certainly help to round out their education by sports and, of course, other things too. So if we could take a look at that, and I did talk briefly with the headmaster in regards to this, if we could just sit down, Madam Superintendent, with the athletic director and the headmaster, and just prepare for next year, because again, if we use that, if we have the same type of weather, we certainly can use that antecedent probability argument that chances are we're going to be running into the same problem again. So I would appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's an excellent idea, and we're due for an athletic subcommittee meeting, so maybe that would be a good venue for Mr. DeProfio to give us a status of both what our plans are for this season to get everybody on the field and planning for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron. Further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Mr. Conway. Asks the superintendent to give an updated report on the status of the van to be purchased for the Colleen Cregan Media Studio at Lowell High School. Second by Ms. Scott. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I think we had a great presentation by the headmaster a while ago, and talking about the wonderful things that are being done at the media, the Colleen Cregan Media Studio, and how it certainly has been, it's been a great place for many of our students to learn and to grow, and we're certainly expanding in that. And I think that when the headmaster talked about the van, I think that was very exciting, and he certainly showed the pictures of the van, and it was one of these things that had more dials on it. I have no idea what they were all about, but I know that it certainly will help our kids, and not only that, but I think it certainly will give the respect to Colleen Cregan that died. It's about 25 years now. So, and the other thing, Mr. Mayor, I think that what we need to do is probably take a motion on this to formally brand that studio as the Colleen Cregan Media Studio. So I'd like to make that as a motion.
Motion by Mr. Conway to officially designate that studio at the Lowell High School as a Colleen Cregan Media Studio. Second by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. So further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Ms. Scott. We have request the superintendent develop a plan to limit the amount of time spent on standardized test preparation and a plan to reduce stress levels felt by children around the standardized test process. Second by Ms. Ross Sikowitz. Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a motion I actually feel very passionate about. I've become very concerned over what MCAS testing has become in the Lowell Public Schools. I have parents that are reporting to me that their children are physically ill over the stress of MCAS testing. They report stomach aches, dizziness, restlessness, fear of failure. Their students were left feeling or even told that the teachers would get in trouble or even lose their jobs if they did not perform well enough on the test. It's not a conversation that should be had with children. The conversation about MCAS success starts as early as the first day of school and can be heard daily, according to the children. The stress starts with frequent testing. We have SRI, SMI, F&P, benchmarks, MCAS prep, MCAS, and long comp. It's a lot for young children to absorb. Parents have also expressed their concern to me that they don't really know what the tests are for, and they wish they were explained what we were testing, so they could relay to their children that it's a way to inform instruction, not to, punish the children. Parents have also questioned what is developmentally appropriate about the tests and if it's a developmentally appropriate way for their children to learn. The tests were supposed to be a planning tool in the classroom, not what they've become. Kids need to have time to play, time to eat lunch, time to socialize so that they can learn. I'm sure that the level of practice tests and the stress at each school varies greatly, but the concern is certainly prevalent at all of our schools. It does seem to depend on how it is framed by our parents, our teachers, and our administrators. I know it's not intentional, but it's certainly harmful and can teach children a lifelong pattern of anxiety. What I would like to see is a forum to discuss how we can do a better job with reducing the anxiety around the tests for our staff and our children. I believe it's a conversation that's definitely worth having and overdue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Further discussion, Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. It's an interesting motion. Initially, you look at it, you're like, why the motion? And I think if you dig deeper and you start thinking about how we go about preparing for all the different tests that we have, that you do become your different benchmarks to see how well we can predict how a particular student's going to do. I was at the Bailey today at my own child's teacher discussion about my child's performance, and we just took just asked how do they handle it at the Bailey, and it was an interesting dynamic. They treat it like a pep rally, in terms of like it's a basketball or football game or whatever. They had actually had a rally. Let's get really motivated, and a lot of the first graders and the second graders actually wrote letters to the fourth graders saying, good luck with your test. I laughed out loud, but as I was walking out, I'm like, that's actually kind of a way to deal with a stressful situation. I think if the maker of the motion would think of bringing this before, I think you talked about having a forum, I think what we should start first is really taking a look at the tests that we're actually taking as benchmarks, the different ones, and the rationale as to why. It's always been a question, why are we doing a particular test? We talk about them frequently at the curriculum subcommittee, but I think really we should probably take a look at is this value of all these types of tests really adding value, or are we just testing? And I think that's an interesting part when I started thinking about the motion. I think that's probably the initial way of targeting it. The stress itself is real. I mean, it is what it is. It's a test. It's a standardized test. We're not going to get away from it. If we can utilize a way to become more effective with it, and I liked what the Bailey did. That was pretty cool. They probably replicate it in different schools in different ways. I think that's a positive approach to a challenging situation. We're not going to get out of the vernacular of MCAS or similar. We're not going to get away when you're walking in the door. It is, unfortunately, it's going to become part of that evaluation. Incidentally, it's not the only part of the evaluation. It's a broad evaluation. And for many folks who have actually done an evaluation, you know that that is one measurement of many. So as you get into evaluations, the anxiety will be reduced just based on the test once you've lived through an evaluation. And I know, because I do a lot of evaluations, so I understand some of that process. But I would support going to the curriculum subcommittee, beginning that dialogue with testing, and I think really a forum as we evolve out of it with more kind of grassroots knowledge of why we're doing these tests. I think that's part of what Ms. Scott was discussing. Why are we doing? Parents are like, well, why are we doing these tests? I think that's important. And I think justifying, they're adding value. And value to who? Value to people so they can get their numbers done easier in central office, or value to the student in performance? We should be looking at value in students' performance, not to make it easier for a central office employee. And I probably shouldn't have said it that way, but my point is it's really, the value is improving test scores, improving overall educational value for the student, not for the folks that are rating it or reviewing it. So if that's the intent, to go to the curriculum, begin the discussion, looking at tests, then I'll support it. I think it's probably a very good thing if it's taken in a way that's thoughtful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larry. Mr. Conway.
Yeah, thank you. I commend my colleague, Ms. Scott, for putting this on. I think that this has been verbalized by a number of teachers and also, I think, a number of parents. And it's the first time it's been actually, in a public forum like this, which I think is I commend Ms. Scott for that, because I think it's something that we've talked about numerous times, parents have and teachers have, and yet, again, there's a tremendous amount of frustration, and I think it would be extremely important to have some type of forum that we can discuss this and make sure that we have parents there and we have teachers there, and we talk about the demands that have been put on the students, and again, whether they're justifiable. So I certainly support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Mr. Jenin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good proposal to try and look for ways to reduce stress among our students, especially the younger ones. But it is obviously important. Standardized testing, MCAS, is important. There is going to be stress, but things like teachers saying they're going to lose their job if the kids don't well on the test. If those things are really happening, that needs to be eliminated. So I think it's good to take a look at it and think about ways that we can reduce stress and make it easier for the kids to do their best. I know the Riley School does the same pep rally type of an environment before they take the test, which I do think is a good idea. So I'm supportive of the motion, and I think that we should take a closer look at this. Maybe a forum is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenin. Mr. Conway?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think that is a reality, because we quite often will take a look and we'll judge schools. And if scores go down, we want to know why. And immediately we start to gravitate towards the principal and ask the principal, why are these scores down? And that principal obviously is very aware of the situation, and the principal is looking at the possibility of his or her job being in jeopardy, and consequently, you can see how someone would then filter that down to the classroom teacher and say, listen, we need to improve on those scores. We need to do this. So that message then it goes back to the teacher, and again, I think what it does do is it adds certainly to the stress. And I think that's why there's different levels that we have to take a look at this to make sure that we're doing a good job all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The goal of assessment what we call formative assessment is to make sure we know children are learning as they grow. Excuse my voice, but you all know that I had it bad this time. Progress is incremental. We need to know if kids are learning and reading on and above grade level. We need to test them in incremental processes. It's part of the federal law, but this same committee is elated when we go from a level 2 to a level 3. And we have great teacher in the room whose school does an unbelievable job of looking at data formatively. How are the kids growing? What are we looking at? Now, in some cases, we have to look at how much and when is it enough? In this accountability era, we've done a lot of formative assessment. And so I am not against re-looking at it, but in order for us to make sure all of our kids are growing and the report cards have some data behind it, that's the formative assessment. I have to tell you that a couple of the anecdotal pieces about what the Bailey's doing and what the Riley's doing, there are a lot of different ways we do test scores, and it is not the intention of the district to make people crazy like that. So I think a forum and to refer to a curriculum subcommittee meeting. But at the curriculum subcommittee meeting, the last 3 times, we've had groups of teachers, McAuliffe, Pawtucketville, and the Merkland's been there, and next week I think it's going to be the Wang School next time. And what they talk about is how they look at information for children and how they know and how they adapt their teaching as a result. That's what real assessment is, but it's not the intention. So let's look at it. It makes sense. If the general public thinks it's too much, it started off when we were a level 4 district, and that was our mandate, that we had to formatively assess to make sure we were on the move. And so that's how it began, but it's always good to reassess. There's some mandates that the Office of Early Childhood has given that are really pretty stringent. So we need to look at it. I don't think it's a bad time for us to review it, but it's always with the intention, as your little kids in my class, I need to know they're growing. And that's what it's about. So we will look at it, though. I think we should refer it to a curriculum subcommittee meeting and make it an open meeting, actually. It's a good idea.
I guess just to
Mr. Leary?
build off that, I think the important part is that this is not going to go away. The question is how we're doing it in a more effective manner. And having a dialogue is not a bad idea. Looking at how we do things and explaining them to folks so they can understand them better is not a bad idea. A lot of folks, when you're going through an evaluation, you are stressing out, and your product is your students. And I think a lot of explanation like this is important to acknowledge that, one, stressing out someone has the opposite effect that you're looking for anyway. I mean, maybe making that to their attention that this is as good intention as you are presenting something just to a young person, that's probably having the opposite effect that you had desired. That's not a bad idea to articulate that, but I think we do need to go through what we're doing for measurements, explaining that in the vernacular that folks understand, not the education speak that we often so much do, and so folks will have a better understanding, and then really have an overall sense that, we're not going to get completely rid of the stress. You're going to have to learn how to manage that throughout your life. As far as figuring out your job's on the line, well, when you get older and you go out and you get a job, you got to perform to some extent. But we can do it in a way that's more meaningful, will probably have better value, and probably have what the desired results are for all of us. So I think it's a good idea to do. I just hope we do it in a thoughtful manner. We got to start looking at what we're doing. Is it add value to the student performance? And can we explain it to people so they can have they may not agree, but at least an understanding and a better comfort level of what we're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ross-Sigowitz.
Thank you. I would agree with many of my colleagues in their comments, and I might add, I've spoken with a broad cross-section of parents who, and I've asked them, how do their children cope with MCAS? Is it a big deal? Is it a little deal? It seems at certain schools there's an attitudinal approach that is negative, and to put on a child, well, if you don't do well on your test, I'm going to lose my job. That's a big burden to put on our kids. And it's wrong. So, perhaps in this process we examine, each of the buildings, their attitudinal approach to this testing. The fact is our testing's not going to go away. So we have to learn better how to approach that with our children.
Thank you, Ms. Rosikowicz. Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Ms. Scott. Again, request the superintendent develop and issue an RFP to provide before and after school care at all of our elementary and middle schools. Second by Ms. Rosikowicz. Ms. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start off by saying that we have some wonderful nonprofits that provide after-school care at some of our schools right now. They don't provide it at all of our schools. They've done a wonderful job, and they've been a great asset to the district. We're presently, though, not serving many of our parents in our schools across the district, and I think it's an issue of equity, that we really need to look at a way that we can reach out and find providers for these other schools. I think opening up the RFP would be a transparent way to do it, really the only way that I think it should be done. It wouldn't cost anything to the district. We wouldn't be putting it out with a dollar amount on it. Our providers right now provide a $10,000 donation per school that they use. We can even talk about eliminating the cost of renting our space so that we can open it up maybe at more schools across the district. I know that there's private providers out there that would be interested in bidding on the RFP. I've reached out and researched a little bit some of the providers. There's one that does the Innovation Academy. They recently bid some in Framingham. So that was my intent, really, was to open up the process, make it transparent and open to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I know we have a couple people here from some of the private providers that may want to speak on the matter. I don't know if you want to speak or if you're just here and, yeah, but I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Sure. Entertain a motion to suspend the rules to allow individuals to speak by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Rosikowicz. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Welcome. If you can just state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Tanya Mead. I am a resident of Lowell. I live on 1 Anderson Court. I am the school-age director for community teamwork. Although we're located only at 6 of the schools in the district, we are opening up a new school this fall at the Rogers School. We take into consideration transportation. We really look to see where the need is, and that's how we based our needs upon opening at the Rogers School. Not only when we're taking into consideration where to open, we also look and talk with the schools who want us. There's other programs that go on, and because we are licensed through the Department of Early Education and Care, we cannot share space. So if there's a basketball game going on, we can't use the gym. So it kind of really shifts where our focus is. We currently have, sorry, I'm a little nervous, wasn't expecting to be put on the spot. We currently have 315 students that we service at the Pawtuckettville Memorial, the Lincoln, the Bailey, the Merkland, the McAuliffe, and the Greenouch. Our morning care programs, we are open at 7 o'clock in the morning. We provide services right now to 91 children. We will be opening up at the Rogers School and hopefully be having 52 children. We've been in contact with the principal. He's already put out an Ed Connect version of a survey for his parents in his newsletter. Our morning care opens at 7, and children are bused out of those programs through Lowell Public School transportation. And children who are coming into our program in the afternoon, the schools are really open to us being available if one school gets out earlier and they're being transported to the Bailey. There's more than enough room for them to be there. We are a fee-for-service program. CTI does have contracts with the Department of Early Education and Care to offer subsidized care for homeless families, DCF families, and low-income families. Families who do not qualify for this subsidized care, we do offer our programming at the state rate. We don't charge them double. You can look at, we can provide you with information as to what we charge. We're not in it to make money off of it. We do charge the lowest rate that's possible. We currently do have quality programming. We use the SACRS tool, which is a school-age environmental program rating scale, to look at our environment and our staff and really how we can improve upon that. We also use the Arnett score observation tool. It's just a tool so we can look at our caregivers and see how we can improve upon them. We are level 2 for QRIS at all of our programs, and these are the tools that we use. During the summertime, we work with BOSNet, which is a literacy program for the summer, and we do the DIBELS to make sure that there's no summer learning loss at any of our programs. We work collaboratively with the Lowell School Department, the Department of Children and Families. Our curriculum is aligned with the core, the Common Core, During the summer and vacation weeks, we offer field trips that are at no cost to any of the families that we provide services to. We do go to the Museum of Science, and we don't charge any extra. We have aligned our safety and evacuations to each individual school, and most recently, we sent a team of our staff members to the Alice Instructor course, so we're aligned with what the public school is doing for options-based response training. Each of our sites is staffed with a full-time coordinator who is either has a bachelor's degree or they are in a degree program, and our ratios are 1 to 13. We are one of many of the organizations in the city that provides care to the school-aged children. The YMCA, the Girls and Boys Club, I can't speak up for them what they offer, but I do know that they also provide really good quality programs too. Lowell Public Schools also offers after-school enrichment activities through the 21st Century, which we collaborate with a lot of them in our program, so we do share space. So we're always shifting, and we try to also incorporate our children to go to those programs too. Having multiple program designs gives working parents more childcare options. School-age childcare is a collaborative effort between Lowell Public Schools and community-based organizations that provide care. We're fortunate that we have the coordinator of special programs to work with to make this go smoothly. We are always open to discussing how we can better serve identified needs and gaps in service in the community. So we're more than welcome to stand up and figure out and help out and do what we can. Thank you.
Very well done. We couldn't tell you were nervous.
I'm Mike Bacigalupo. I'm the Director of Family Child Care, and I also oversee the school-age program for community teamwork. One thing I just wanted to add to Tanya's comments was just that we service 26 schools at our 6 after-school sites. I'm not sure how many the Y and the Boys and Girls Club service, but we know that all the community organizations that run after-school programs do bus children in to the program, so there is an opportunity for kids in all the schools to get serviced. The area of need that probably you'd really want to look at is morning care. We're in 2 programs right now, expanding to a 3rd in the fall, we hope. That's probably the area of need that that we're not meeting right now, but it might be good to check and see what parents really need. And the thing you got to remember too is that a lot of parents will always want services, childcare. It's when you have to add in the cost, sometimes you can see a drop off in the willingness to pay, and it is expensive to run these programs. But luckily in Lowell, we've got a really good system right now. We've got multiple organizations that work together. We have a great relationship with the school department, and like Tanya said, there's a lot of different needs that need to be met. So we have programs that run 5 days a week, some that run 2 days a week. Like the 21st Century is great if you need a day or two, and it offers a lot of enrichment. And then we've got the 5-day-a-week programs and the year-round programs. So there's a real good mix of programming and organizations, and I think that makes the whole system a lot more secure, and it doesn't add a burden to the school department. I mean, you guys have to worry about educating the children, and you come to us to take care of the rest, and I think we do that really well in partnership, and hopefully we can improve the system and really not rock it too much. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just follow up on that. Okay?
Mr. Jenner.
Thank you. So I think, obviously, we're lucky to have organizations like Community Teamwork and the Lowell Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA and so forth that help us with this issue of before and after school care. And, not speaking for Ms. Scott, but I don't think the intention of the motion was to attack them in any way. I think that, as I read it, the spirit of the motion is how can we find a way to provide before and after school care for all the students of Lowell who need it, and that's a good thing. I think that's something that's worthy of discussing. So I would suggest, if I may, that we refer this to the Finance Subcommittee, since it's all about money, right? And we have a discussion there, perhaps invite the community organizations that are involved to participate, and maybe come up with a strategy whereby we can offer greater amounts of services. Because I know I've been contacted as well by parents who are struggling to try to find before and after school care for their kids, and it's expensive and it's a burden for the parents. So if there's a way we can do it and a way we can meet that need without breaking the budget, then I'm all in favor of that. So I would make that motion that we refer to the Finance Subcommittee for review and discussion.
Okay, motion to amend to refer this item to the Finance Subcommittee by Mr. Gendron, second by Mr. Leary. All those in discussion on that motion? Ms. Ross-Sigowitz.
I just actually have a point to make. We several months back, had actually put forward a motion with regard to establishing feasibility in terms of what the demand would be at each of our schools, surveys, so we could establish what that demand is. And I don't believe we've gotten any data back on that as yet, but certainly that would underpin, the need for, procuring these services, additional services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosikowicz. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. The opposed, motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Mr. Leary. Request superintendent provide a report to the school committee that outlines the teaching strategies TS Gold program. The report should include the requirements from the state and how the Lowell Public Schools are implementing the program within our system. Second by Mr. Genrin. Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I just want to say that the motion started off from a neighbor of mine who's a kindergarten teacher who's here tonight, Danielle Savoy. I just want to thank her for being tenacious and sitting down with me and really explaining a lot of the issues that many folks who are teaching kindergarten in our earlier first and second grade classes may be going through. And what I wanted to do is actually, if I reframed the motion, but I really want this to go to the curriculum subcommittee and actually have this discussion with some of the kindergarten teachers and some of the folks that are actually implementing and actually using this system right now. A lot of the system is tied into federal grants that are benefiting our overall programs. But I guess part of the issue really is in terms of implementation to get that grant and finding ways of not only understanding it better, but maybe implementing it better so we're not sitting there basically doing evaluations instead of teaching. So my real framework here is to begin that dialogue and begin that in the curriculum subcommittee and really come before the full committee once a lot of these issues are hashed out, and hopefully a good strategy that can mend, bring together the finances that we desperately need, and make it possible for kindergarten teachers to actually be effective. I mean, not that they're not being effective now, but this is becoming somewhat of a challenge for them to implement, and that's taken away from their abilities to really teach at the end of the day. In addition, the information being used as you go from kindergarten to first grade, the first grade teachers really, from what I've been seeing, what value does it add to them? And I think it probably could add value if we do it in a better way. I've learned a lot about it initially when brought before me. I was like, oh, here we go again, another issue, you don't want to do something. But after I sat down and started listening to some of the issues and some of the challenges and some of the ways that we're implementing it, I'm really like, how can you even do your job? So I look forward to hopefully bring this before the curriculum subcommittee, hopefully this Tuesday. I did talk to the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, Claire Abrams, and I think definitely we could begin that dialogue. I know it'll be lengthy, but I think it'd be of high value. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a great motion by my colleague, Mr. Leary. I'm hopeful, too, at that subcommittee that the kindergarten teachers will be in attendance, I'm sure. Oh, yeah. And hopefully we can try to quantify, too, the amount of time taken away from instruction that's being spent on this evaluation, because it's very intensive. So I'm hoping we can have that discussion, too, and come up with some numbers. Thank you.
If I could, to suspension of the rules to let Danielle Savoy speak on it, the kindergarten teacher from...
Yeah, absolutely. Motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The opposed, motion carries. Danielle, welcome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Danielle Savoy of 18 Oakland Street in Lowell. I'm a Lowell public school teacher and a Lowell parent, proud daily Lowell parent tonight. I will be really brief because I'm very hopeful that this issue can be brought before the subcommittee, the curriculum subcommittee. But kindergarten teachers, I'll just say that kindergarten teachers are in Lowell and across our state, and across the country actually, are being faced with using an assessment cycle software tool. That's sort of the best way I can describe it, called Teaching Strategies Gold, that requires kindergarten teachers to level kindergarten children on 65 separate areas. Some of these areas include up to 5 separate skills. So then you have over 100 leveled skills. We're doing this at least 3 times a year, and it is erasing our ability to engage properly with our children. It is not giving us the opportunity to employ the best practices that we know work. We are highly trained, highly caring, highly motivated teachers, and we want to do the best for our children. And this tool claims to be a tool that's going to help us, but it is not living up to that expectation, and in fact, it is hindering our ability to do our job. And we so deeply want to help our children reach the potential that we know they can. So thank you, and hopefully we'll be able to have further discussion in the future. But I just wanted to put it out there, and I wanted to thank Ms. Ross for providing an eloquent segue here, because her discussion on standardized testing really opens the door. We all talk about MCAS and PARCC, and few people realize that high stakes, standardized, overwhelming, excessive testing has trickled down to kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. So it's an important conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danielle. Mr. Leary, anything further? No? Okay. Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the opposed? Motion passes. Next motion of the evening, again by Mr. Leary. Request superintendent provide a report to the school committee with an update on the expansion plans for the Rogers School, as well as any other recommendations for reconsidering and rezoning the district in the future. Seconded by Ms. Scott. Mr. Leary.
Just the part of this comes a couple years ago. I remember we were looking at busing costs and looking at potentially rezoning the entire district. And a lot of plans, a lot of discussions were going on in terms of how this could be done and how could it be done in an effective way that actually saved costs and had the minimal impact upon the student. And as we brought in the Rogers School, a lot of thought went into, in terms of the STEM Academy, do we turn that into a K through 8 or a K through 4? And if it was a K through 4, what middle school would they go into? Would it be the Butler? Would it be whatever, which one? And I think what we need to do is really dust off a lot of the discussions we had regarding the larger picture for the entire community and the discussions we probably are having but need to have in the open now. What happens when you reach 4th grade at the STEM Academy? Do we have a 5th grade? Or are we going to roll into a different middle school? And I think we should do those in kind of the same time frame. A lot of discussions, if I remember, that didn't make a lot of floor, there was no votes on it. A lot of discussions had meaningful thoughts like, now we have children who are in one zone that would be eliminated if you change zones. You'd have to grandfather people, and there'd have to be a time frame to work or unwind that before you achieve the full savings. I think those plans haven't been discussed because we're so busy in different areas, but I think that's something, as busing costs continue to rise, and if we've done everything we can to minimize while still being safe for busing costs, we still got to look at that. Whether we go forward with it or not might not happen. In conjunction with that, though, we have to do something with the Rogers, because in 4th grade, they're going to 5th grade somewhere. Should we continue it to a K through 8, have 3 K through 8s in the system? Or should we, what feeder school is it going to be? Do they go back to whatever the local zone middle school would be? What would that impact be? I don't anticipate this coming back in the next few weeks. This is something that's probably going to have to be discussed throughout the summer, really in the fall, and probably at this point next year really having plans. So it's a long-term thought, but I think we definitely need to begin that and maybe have that issued out in the air a little bit in terms of where we were 3 or 4 years ago in terms of that discussion. What are we thinking, at least kind of brainstorming at this point about the Rogers School? Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Leary. Further discussion? Ms. Ross-Sikowitz.
Thank you. Mr. Leary, I think that this motion by Mr. Leary is very timely. I know we've discussed this in many different versions over the past 3 years, at least the time that I've been aboard. And, you know, and even in canvassing the city, and you'll run across families who, you know, they purchase homes in, say, the Highlands or Pawtucketville or whatever neighborhood, and they're fully expecting that their child go to school at the closest to their home. And in most cases, that's not the case. That's not the case. Their kids are being bused across the city. So, it seems, in many respects to those parents, insanity when they can just bring them to school right up the street, right down the road, rather than traversing across the river, clear to the other side of the city. It all goes back to a desire for, going back to more neighborhood schools. And so again, I'm really glad for this discussion to come up again, because I think it's, definitely worthy. And, if not 2 zones, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4. We're pretty flexible because we have so many buildings in the district that I think we can actually make this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rosigowitz. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion passes. Next motion of the evening by Mr. Leary and myself, request superintendent contact Congresswoman Tsongas, Senator Markey, and Senator Warren in order to discuss appropriate funding for students entering the Lowell Public Schools Newcomers Program. We also have a similar motion. Mr. Gendron, do you want to take it together, or do you want to?
Sure, let's take that together.
There's another motion, entertain a motion to take both motions together by Ms. Scott, second by Ms. Rosigowitz. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. Second motion, very similar. Request superintendent provide a report on the receiver communities for newcomers in Massachusetts, how they are chosen, and the numbers received in recent years. Mr. Leary, then Mr. Gendron.
I think the second motion actually ties in really nice, because what we need to do, this is the third motion regarding funding, and I think we need to really light a fire at this point, because we are deficient at least about 10 grand per student coming in. So if you're getting 12 grand and it costs 22, easy math, obviously, 10 grand that we're missing, and that's beginning to have an impact on what we're trying to achieve. We want the students to come to Lowell. Our teachers, our administrators are excellent at educating new individuals coming into our community. We know how to do it. But we need to really outreach, similar to what happened when you had a large influx of the Cambodians and other Southeast Asians that came into the community. We need to really reach out to the leaders who are bringing them there to ask for the financing. Mr. Gendron's motion is good because we need to really tie in Lynn and Springfield and Boston and really get, as a group, go to our elected delegation, in this case, the Congresswoman and our 2 senators, and actually, instead of just getting letters and nice calendars that we all can get, really sit down and say, what is your action plan to talk to the Obama administration to help achieve some of the finances that we desperately need to do an excellent job educating people coming into our country. I do want to thank our news reporter for going out to the Moody School and actually begin to look at how effective we are at doing it. But what the challenges are in educating someone who comes from, war-torn Iraq, who doesn't speak English. They do have an educational background, so someone from there is probably going to make a quicker adjustment. But we have young folks coming from other countries that don't speak the language and have 0 formal education in their own country. And yet our folks are doing a pretty incredible job trying to educate them. But they don't have enough of them, which costs dollars to do it. So I think instead of just sending motions and writing letters, I think we actually need to make phone calls. I appreciate, can't wait to read the article in the paper, because I think that's really what we need is a ground support to say, okay, they're coming here, fantastic. Now put the finances behind that program to help us be very successful in doing what you're asking us to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I agree with everything Mr. Leary said. I think that it became clear to me at the discussion we had at the last meeting what an injustice this is, really, for us to be, these students to be delivered to our city without any funding. And the cost and effort necessary to educate them is so great. And they're just delivered here, and we need to find a way to deal with them. And we do, and we're not afraid of it. Okay, this is Lowell, and that's what we do. I firmly believe that we welcome that education of newcomers, but not without any funding. We really have to find a way to change that. And that's going to take a groundswell of effort here across the community. Just sending a letter or making a phone call and saying this is a problem is not enough. This is an issue that we really have to take on as a community to address. That's why I've asked in my portion of the motion here that we dig in a little bit. I'd like to learn a little bit more about what are the receiver communities in Massachusetts? How are they selected? What are the numbers like? How many newcomers come to Lowell? How many newcomers, come to other communities around the state? I'd like to understand the issue a little bit more so that we can be more educated when we talk to our representatives, our congressmen and our senators, rather than just saying, hey, we need money with these people. We want to be able to understand the situation. It sounds to me, based on what I've learned so far, is that the poorest communities in the state are responsible for picking up the education of these young people that come in here with no background at all in English or any other subjects that we teach here, and no funding. That is truly an injustice, and we're not afraid of it. We're willing to take it on. Lowell is a melting pot. We're willing to bring in newcomers and educate them here, but not without the funding. That is just that's an injustice, and it damages the education of every other student in the district. I've talked to teachers who say that they have newcomers or people who are kids who are close to newcomers put into their classrooms, and they just have to deal with it. They just have to find a way to deal with it. And that is such a drain on their effort that it's hard to educate the rest of the class. It's stealing from the education of the other students in the class. So it is something that truly needs to be addressed. I think we need to take it on as a district-wide effort. And so my motion here to start to gain information so that we can create this groundswell is my intent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gentleman. Madam Superintendent, and I'd like to speak on this also, so what is the wish of the body? Speak from here. Okay, Madam Superintendent?
Yeah, that connects with the realignment plan that we've been trying to get underway for the past 2 years, which I believe is still not enough support. We talked about it last time. I'm offended that you don't think we're advocating enough. We advocate all the time. I've spent 39 years on it, so we'll continue that. I'm going to be honest with you. I had a meeting the other day at Lowell High School, which I can actually speak to Mr. Conway's sports thing, because kids were practicing until 9:30 at night all around Lowell High School, different sports, interesting. 300 newcomer parents came, and we explained to them about the new programs that have to happen, because when newcomer programs come, and that's my specialty, they come with their kids, because you don't leave your kids for 2 generations, okay? And we had an unbelievably wonderful meeting, and I invited them here to advocate for those ESL teachers that we're going to need. It's the beginning of us moving towards everything else you're talking here. I will not be here to see this through. However, when you talk about neighborhood schools, you have to be able to have access every place. That's what the realignment program has been all about. So we're lining up for that. The funding will happen. I've been writing letters. I've talked to Congresswoman Tsongas especially, but I will reach out. I will testify. I mean, State House, Washington, D.C., I'm an expert on this. So I'm more than willing to do this in the 40 days I have left. I don't know if I'll get done, but I will be able to go out on a limb and do that for you. But this committee's added at least 3 ESL programs each year that I've been superintendent of schools. We will continue to do that. So I'm so happy to hear this level of support, because it's what this district needs. It's a changing district. It's a district with what the right support. We do wonderful work. As you look at our diversity on the stage, as they walk across, who are Carnegie medalists? Everybody. It's awesome. So I just want you to know, we do take this seriously. And the alignment program is the first part of that. And not the first part, we've been working on it a long time, but it all comes down to dollars. So I'm more than willing to be your poster child for the remaining days that I'm here.
Okay. I got Ms. Scott and then Mr. Conway and then Mr. Jenin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to just echo my colleagues' sentiments, but also include that this isn't just a funding piece. That's even more insulting to this district is that when we get really good and we get the systems in place that we need to educate these students, which is what we do, we teach children, right? They change and we get another population that comes in, there's no stability. The systems that we get in place, we hire Burmese tutors, we hire Burmese teachers, and then the population changes with no notice. We don't know who's coming tomorrow. And that's another whole issue that needs to be discussed in addition to the funding piece, is that there needs to be some system in place to notify us. Thank you. Mr.
Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that these motions are certainly timely. They're motions that we've talked about on the floor here a number of times. And, and again, to echo my colleagues' statements, The Lowell has certainly stepped up to the plate to help out any new immigrants. We represent anywhere from 80 to 85 different countries that have come into this country. We've also have well over 50 languages that are spoken in the Lowell school system. We educated almost 15,000 students. It's one of the most complicated and diverse groups that we have in the state, and yet, as my colleague just mentioned, it certainly is irresponsible for little or no notice for individuals to be brought to our doorstep with, and again, we've talked about the finance part of it. Needless to say, that is certainly a problem. But I think in this, when we're also doing this discussion, I think what needs to be brought up by Madam Superintendent is the fact that these newcomers, in many instances, are, should we say, illiterate, not only just in the English language, but also in their own language. So that's you have to go back to a level that's extremely complicated for a teacher to be able to handle, because many of these students have not received any formal education in their own country. And again, to put these individuals at our doorstep, and as one of my colleagues mentioned, it certainly does dilute the resources for the remaining students in the classroom. So I think that, again, this is timely. We need to talk about this. We need to bring people that make the decision, bring them to the table, and certainly give them the picture. Give them the picture of exactly what we're faced with. This is no time to sugarcoat it. We need to put everything out on the table and let them know what we have to face with every single day and be able to succeed. And we need the tools in order to do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just through you to the superintendent, Madam Superintendent, I glean from your comments that you're taking this as some type of a personal assault, and I think that that's not the case. I think you're taking it wrong. I don't think anybody's trying to say that you haven't done enough, or that you don't care about this, or this isn't important to you. Obviously it is. It's important to all of us. And I recognize the fact that the realignment is an effort to try to address that. But I think we agree violently on the fact that it's not enough, that we don't get the notification, as Ms. Scott pointed out. We don't get the funding we need. And in order to address it, having you speak at a hearing is good, but it's not enough. What we need is a groundswell across this community to understand that our school system is being cheated out of the funding that we need to adequately provide an education for these newcomers. So we need to create that groundswell. That's why we need information about I feel like I need information. Maybe everybody else already has it. But I feel like I need information so I can inform my constituents that they should be upset about this. They should be calling their congressmen and their senators. And the people across the state should be calling their congressmen and senators, letting them know that we are being cheated in our education here because we're not getting the appropriate funding for this newcomer program. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron. Further discussion on this issue? I filed the motion with Mr. Leary as a result of the discussion that took place last week for exactly all of the reasons that have been mentioned prior, so I'm not going to go over them. But I feel compelled, I completely concur that the fact that we receive hundreds of newcomers on a daily basis in a district that is already jam-packed with students. We have we've opened a Rogers School. We're trying to create STEM programs. We're trying to improve our district. No business organization, no entity can handle such an influx of students, of participants, of employees, anything. It's a bad practice. What I can share is I believe those gateway cities, those cities that have organizations that help in the resettling process, i.e. the International Institute here in Lowell, they are in direct communication with the State Department. The State Department, I don't think, cares little about when a refugee is resettled or where they are in the school year, they just send these names and individuals to an entity, and if there is housing, if there is a place for them to stay, they are automatically sent there. They are sent there. It's an option. So I think that is the initiated where it's initiated, Mr. Gender, just to let you know. I would like more information as well to determine why does Lowell get so many students? Why does Lynn? Why does Chicopee? It's not just, and I think you mentioned, we need to have this discussion to develop a groundswell of support, because we're not the only community dealing with this. It's the gateway cities that I will presume have an organization that can help in the resettlement process, and if they have housing, and if they have someone in that community, then they're sent here. And I believe that's how, what I think we need to do is give them a plan. What is the plan? If we are going to receive newcomers, there's got to be a cutoff. There's got to be a time frame. Okay, after this time frame, you cannot go to, you can't come to the community because they're already in, they've had their plan, they have class sizes, and in Lowell's case, we don't have any more room. We're upwards of 28 students per class. At that point, the quality of education, we all know, is compromised, and you're right, I think they're cheated, and those students who are in the classroom, who have to, the teachers have to take time, or we have to take resources to set up other classrooms, it's not fair to the district either. So I completely support getting more information and reaching out to our members of Congress. They're the ones that have to reach out to the State Department or Department of Education and say, this flies in the face of everything that we tried to put forward in our school district in the Commonwealth, and at least nationwide, I'd be surprised if this isn't a major problem. So I think these are very good motions, and this is where the dialogue will start, right here. Mr. Leary?
Just through you to Madam Superintendent. And Madam Superintendent, when we put two motions on, I think when I put them on, one of the things that I took too lightly is the challenge it was to get anybody to pay attention to us. And I threw out the flippant comment about calendars, and it wasn't a flippant comment meant to be to you. It was meant that the position was people didn't take us seriously. I think your commitment has been exemplary. I think you've done everything that you can do at this level. I think part of the process is it takes a long time to build that type of understanding at that level. The mayor just articulated, it's the State Department we're talking about, Department of Education. It isn't even local state reps or senators or governor, it's the State Department. I think by having the newspaper go look at the Moody School, talking to the principal and the staff, looking at folks, what they're going through. The third motion, and sort of the anger, I'm glad that you're passionate about it, because that means, we've all been put in a position of educating people that we do a great job with and we want to do. We just don't have the resources to do it effectively. So I know you're angry, and I think that anger is good in a way. Hope it's not at us. I think it's directed at folks needing to listen to us. And I think the words groundswell are really what it is. It's going to take a lot longer to do it. We need to join with other communities. Unfortunately, it's probably a nationwide issue. You're talking about dealing with the federal government, which is never, it's like, turning the Queen Mary in the Merrimack River. You can do it, but it takes a heck of a lot of time to do it. So I appreciate the commitment to the committee, and I appreciate your involvement as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Further discussion on this motions? No objection. We'll take both of these motions together. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, both motions carry. Next motion of the evening by Mr. Gendron. Request superintendent send letters of thanks on behalf of the school committee to all applicants for the superintendent search committee. Second by Mr. Conway. Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a fairly simple motion. I just want to make sure that we had several people apply to be part of that search, search committee for the superintendent. It's great that we have so many people interested in supporting our local government. So I want to make sure they all receive a letter of thanks from us for their willingness to participate. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Next motion of the evening by Mr. General. Request the school committee declare May 26th to be second annual Lowell Public School Community Service Day. seconded by Ms. Scott. Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On a lighter note, now we can all take a deep breath and step back. We're going to talk about something fun that we do here in the city, and that's Community Service Day. This year, we've done this around Earth Day in April, but because of testing schedules and snow delays, we've agreed that we should push this out a little bit. So we're going to do it on May 26th, and it's really going to be a celebration of the community service that Lowell Public Schools does all year round. It's incredible. I'm learning a lot about the number of community service efforts that are going on in Lowell Public Schools. It's really incredible, and it's heartwarming. And so there's going to be a celebration of that on May 26th. And we're actually going to have several events where several of the schools are going to be involved. My understanding is we're going to do something else with Mill City Grows in the community gardens. We're going to do the Demoulas bags where the young kids decorate the bags and deliver them to Demoulas. We're going to do a downtown cleanup, and I think we might even have a parade. So we have a lot going on Community Service Day. Looking forward to that on May 26th. Ask all my colleagues to mark their calendars and bring your trash bags and come down here and join in on the cleanup. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron. Further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, the motion carries. Moving on to the next section of the agenda, we have subcommittees. We have a report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Monday, March 18th, 2015. The chairwoman of that subcommittee, Ms. Martin, is sick, and she is not here this evening, so I would defer to, there are two other members, Ms. Scott and Mr. Conway. Mr. Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're delegated to make the report?
I'm sorry?
You're delegated.
Apparently. Right? Anyways, I just got word just prior to the to our meeting that I was going to give this report. So anyway, we had a meeting on Wednesday, March 18th, the Personnel Subcommittee meeting, and present the chairperson, Connie Martin, myself, and Kim Scott. Other members present, Mayor Rodney Elliott, Steve Gendron, Jim Leary, Kristen Rosikowicz, and also from the school department personnel was the Director of Human Resources, Mike Cassidy. We talked about the superintendent search process. During this particular subcommittee report, there will be a number of motions, Mr. Mayor, that we need to take up. The chairperson, Martin, asked Michael Gilbert, the field director of the Massachusetts Association of the School Committees, who was helping out with this process. Mr. Gilbert, to give an update to it, Mr. Gilbert indicated that his organization has sent out the marketing brochure, and his organization has been recruiting candidates. And at that particular time, there were 13 applicants, but as we know, I believe there were 22 or 24 finalized that applied for the superintendent's job. Mr. Gilbert indicated the next step in the process is for the school committee to review and select the members of the screening committee. The screening committee will meet on Wednesday, March 25th, and will be trained on the opening meeting law, conflict of interest laws, and confidentiality. Mr. Gilbert indicated that interviews are still scheduled to begin on April 6th. There was a motion by Ms. Martin, the chairperson, a second by myself to appoint Mr. Liam Skinner, a principal at the Daly Middle School, as the building level administrator representative, Ms. Patricia Gajeka, Title I Director as the Central Office Representative, and Ms. Kathleen McLaughlin, Rogers STEM Academy, Ms. Pina Maggio, Robertson School, Middle School, and Mr. Paul George is the President of the UTL as the three teachers representative. That was approved by a vote on 3-0. I make a motion to the full committee on this particular item.
Motion by, to accept the recommendation of the Personnel Subcommittee by Mr. Conway.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, on the motion, maybe we should just, I know there are several others, maybe we should put them all out there and take them all as a group? Is that?
Yeah, I
make
was
sense to
going
you?
to also, that's probably a good idea. You want to just bring in all the motions, and then we'll take them all.
All right.
Motion to take all the motions suggested by the Personnel Subcommittee by Mr. Gendron, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Mr. Conway, Mr. Designated Chair.
Do we, at that particular point, are we naming all of them at
Yes.
this point? Okay.
Yes.
The next was to appoint Ms. Susan Lynn, Project Learn, as the community partner representative. Also, there was a motion by myself, a second by Ms. Scott, to appoint Ms. Maria Cunha as Associate Dean for Middlesex Community College. There was a motion by Ms. Scott, second by Chairperson Martin, to appoint Sharon Hardy Gallagher as a community representative to the selection committee. And also, there was a motion by Chairperson Martin and second by myself to appoint Kerry de Entremont, Greater Lowell Health Alliance, as a community partner representative in the selection, also in the selection committee. And there was a motion by Ms. Martin, second by myself, to appoint all 7 parents, Ms. Christine Bell, Ms. Stacy Dixon, Ms. Heather Forsythe, Ms. Megan Hitchcock, Mr. Robert Rogerson, and Ms. Sydney Liang, and Ms. Catherine LaRocque as the parent representative to the selection committee. I present that as a motion. And also, I'm sorry, one other one, Mr. Mayor. We did get a correspondence from Mr. Martin because there was a student that was going to be appointed. We were waiting for that student, and that student's name is Andre Regal, who was a sophomore in the Latin Lyceum.
Okay, so there are a number of motions. Madam Clerk, you could hold those, well, we had the report, though. It's all part of the report.
Correct.
All of these individuals. So motion to proceed with these recommendations by Mr. Conway, seconded by Ms. Ross Sikowitz. On the motion to adopt these individuals?
Just real
Mr.
quick,
Larry?
I had a couple of questions. Just one of the questions that, I failed to ask, and I apologize, that the process itself, I thought the process itself wasn't going to be voting on people individually. I thought it was actually going to be drawn out of a hat. And that's something, as we got into the night, it was at the subcommittee meeting, and I just sat there looking at folks coming through and voting on people individually. A lot of the people, I thought, the ones that I knew and the ones that the resumes I read were fantastic individuals. And I'm very happy that folks took the time to apply. Speaking for myself, I apologize for the process, the way it came out. I should have spoke up, because that's not the way you should, find out if you're going to get accepted to a committee you volunteer, and especially when we said it was going to go through a process. So that's to me, for my point for not speaking up, I'm very sorry for that. I think the process too, the second point that you had, the premise, I think that the losing side, if it was a 4-3 side, really said, why don't we have folks do it in the open? And now we have 3 members of the public schools who are alleged to have applied out in the open. So the process that keeping confidential, which lost 4-3, going out in public, actually didn't work. So I wanted to definitely acknowledge that publicly, because that's something that was not the intent of the majority's motion. So somehow somebody on our committee either spoke to somebody and they leaked it, or someone spoke and leaked it out, which is, I think, an issue that when you go in executive session, I think you got to try to do your best to keep it in executive session, especially after we took a specific vote to say we wanted employees to have confidentiality. Now, we have 3 members of the Lowell Public Schools who allegedly applied. Now, everybody knows that they applied. Now, that's what might be a problem. So what if one of them doesn't get selected and another one does? So everybody now knows what that individual did. So now that person might be in jeopardy of their particular job. That's what the premise was under keeping it in confidentiality. So that to me is a significant problem. You can't have it both ways. I personally felt if it was someone who's going to apply for a job, you're probably going to want to put your name out. I can understand the premise. If I work in the Chelmsford Public Schools, for example, and I value my job, but I'm looking for an opportunity, I might not want my boss to know that I'm applying. And I thought that was the premise. So I don't know how I feel about that. I definitely wanted to come out and say it because I think that's a major problem. It's a major problem to the 3 people who work for the Lowell Public Schools who applied. And I don't know what the remedy is for that, but I think there is definitely a problem, and there's something that we need to do to rectify that. And interestingly enough, and I don't know why this is, there's 7 folks, I guess, because there's 10. I mean, I'm assuming from the email we got 10 folks have been put forward to the committee set up for next week. 7 of them I don't know, yet I know 3. And the only people in the room were the people in the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it feels clumsy, at best. I think I've made my position known on this. I didn't want to have a screening committee. I felt as though we should be the screening committee. I felt as though we were elected by the people of the city of Lowell to be the screening committee. We have former teachers on this board. We have parents of students in the district on this board at all levels. We have people who work in business. We have people who work in nonprofits. We're a pretty good cross-section of the city. I think, certainly we want input from all the community groups, but I felt as though we ought to be the screening committee. We should be the ones making the choices. And, one of the reasons we couldn't do it in public was because we need to maintain confidentiality, and that's kind of out the window now. So it feels very clumsy. We need to plow ahead, I think. I feel as though we're rushed here. We're up against it. I think we need to have a superintendent, but I'm not happy with the process by which this process going forward. I think we could have done without this sort of medium level of screening. Thank you. We have Mask did initial screening. Now we're going to have another screening that happens in private. And then we're going to get some of the candidates. I would really like to see all the candidates. There's 10 people who have been selected by Mask. I know who 3 of them are because I read it in the paper, but I'm not going to find out about the other 7 unless that gets in the paper, which it very well might. But I'd like to see them. I'd like to know, who they are and what their experience is and make that decision. I feel as though, the public wants us as their representatives, on the school department to make that choice. And, we're not going to get a chance with this, the way it's structured now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron. Mr. Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Martin isn't here right now, but I would like to say that she brought forward a process that she thought would make things better, easier, more effective and efficient. And I think that certainly I applauded her for that, and I think other members did too. The problem is it did get muddied. It really did get muddied as the time progressed. I think that we had a process in place for well over 25 years that we didn't run into problems like this, and it was very clear. It was very clear that there were X amount of people that were on that committee. I think there were 13. And what happens in that particular process? The entity was notified. For example, the university or Middlesex Community College or the teachers union, and said, give us 1 or 2 or whatever it may be. And I think that. That was a cleaner process, and to be quite frank with you, again, it was something that was in place for well over 25 years. Is something perfect? No, of course it wasn't absolutely perfect, but I don't think we didn't run into a problem like we ran into this situation here. So again, going forward. I think that there are a number of good individuals on this blue ribbon committee. I'll be honest with you, I don't know a lot of them, but I'm sure that there are people that want to pick the best person for the job of the superintendent, or help, should we say, vet the individual that will be passed down to the school committee. The final decision is still the school committee. There's no doubt about that. I've been on committees. I've been on the other side of the committees, and I know one thing, that once these people sit down at the table, they take it very, very serious. Very serious. So I have total confidence that they are going to do an excellent job in what they're charged with. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Further discussion? Mr. Conway, would you take the chair? I really want to come down and, she's not here, so
I believe it would be Mr. Leary. He
Oh, is it
the-
Mr. Leary? I am so sorry.
Where's the hammer? All right. Do I recognize you or somebody else? Chair recognized the great mayor of the city of Lowell.
I'm sorry, I didn't know it was seniority, and that's
And
that's
best
no
looking.
slight.
Best looking is really the criteria. Not saying anything,
Wow.
but, you know.
Well, discombobulated now. I couldn't agree more. I've really been very troubled in the last several weeks with this search process. And I do feel compelled to speak on it as well. I think we went through great lengths to put a process in place, to do as much as we could to, take the political nature out of this. And we went down a very different path. We took a different track, and we created different criteria. We have been meeting since January, and this time around, I supported the decision to move forward and hire a consultant to provide guidance, create job description, establish new procedure, search process, selection process, and to me, it seems that the opposite seems to have occurred, and that we're going in the opposite direction with what has taken place. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, we had teachers here saying that we're putting in language to prohibit the union president from being a member, and nothing could be further from the truth. We had a couple of weeks ago, we had motion on the floor to make this more open, make it more transparent, make it more what I think is participatory for the people at home, parents, teachers, paras, the people in the school district, everyone. And the premise of that was we don't want to let the 10 finalists, we don't want their names to be released, okay? We all got it. Lo and behold, there are 3 names in the public now, and the governing body that is charged with making the decision, which I think is the most important decision that we will make, or we can make as a school committee, had no knowledge of these names. And to me, that has just compromised that entire part of the process. That names are released, and the entire premise of this, meeting of a blue ribbon commission behind closed doors was to do exactly what happened, or the opposite of what happened, excuse me. So, I don't know where to go with this because, it's baffling to me. It's baffling that these names are out and that we are in a position where we just didn't want to be. It's incomprehensible. That is a disservice to this committee. And there are some very interested, dedicated people that applied for this. I agree with Mr. Leary. I didn't think that we were going to go through a public discussion of the candidates, because I know of other candidates that were interested. I mean, I thought there was going to be a different selection process. We started getting into a debate about which individuals who should be appointed and who shouldn't be appointed, and it becomes political at that point. And I thought that's exactly what we were trying to prevent. So at that subcommittee meeting, and this is not a slight on Ms. Martin, I believe she did the best in this committee, as best as we possibly could. But to me, the process has run amok. And I think we need to take a step back. I think we need to determine. I agree with Mr. Gendron. I would, since day one, I want to see those 10 resumes. I want to be able to make my informed decision. No slight against this Blue Ribbon Committee, but what they are looking for in a superintendent might be different than what I'm looking for or the members of the committee. So I feel and I'm sure they'll do a fine job. Again, I just am different. When we select a city manager, we all came up with very different candidates based upon those that applied. Same thing with, whether it was the clerk or the auditor. My thought was that we were going to hire a consultant to go through the screening process, forward to us qualified candidates who would fit into the responsibilities of this job. And, I submit I would still like to see those 10 candidates, if that is the number. And we can still hold public meetings. The Blue Ribbon Commission can still proceed with, their responsibility or their duty if they would like. But I would like to see those 10 names, and I would like to make the decision who the 5 individuals should be. How we accomplish that? We can still hold public meetings and have the Blue Ribbon and parents and the entire public participate if they so choose. But moving forward, I think I think this committee should be able to see those 10 resumes. Again, how we do that logistically, I don't want to upset this Blue Ribbon Committee. They've taken time to apply, but I think the selection process was marred to some degree. And that's unfortunate because there are some individuals that are very talented in this community that I would like to see part of this Blue Ribbon Committee. So it doesn't make any sense, and I would like to I'd like to make a motion that we do receive these 10, that we change the process, and that this committee receives the 10 names, and that we proceed from that point. 3 of them are public. So it's not as if we have to worry. I mean, I'm sure we have, some of the other 7 candidates are concerned. But, I also maintain that this is a public body, it's a public position, and there's not much you can do about it. Apparently, names are going to get out anyway. It seems to happen all the time. So I'd like to make that motion, that
There's a motion on the floor in a second. Is that making a substitute motion?
Oh, okay, you're right. I apologize. Yeah, I would like to make that a substitute motion that this committee proceed with getting those 10 resumes, and we make a determination to who the 5 we will look at to be interviewed.
Okay. Is there a second to the substitute motion?
Yes, I'll second.
Mr. Gendron, a second. Question from Madam Sikowicz?
So is the intent of the motion maker to eliminate the Blue Ribbon Committee?
Well, let's do the question through the chair to Mayor Elliott.
I believe that they still and can provide a role and participate with us. They can join us in these public discussions and ask questions. And I still think, I don't want to eliminate the committee. I mean, I think that we should proceed, considering the names are released. The process is compromised at this particular point in time. If you want to continue down this track, I'm not comfortable doing that because I want to make a decision on 10 candidates, not 5 or 7. Guess what? Maybe some of the others may drop out now. Maybe they're concerned that their names are going to get released. Somebody who has access to those names, and there's not a member on this committee that received those names, leaked that information, and that is at all levels wrong. Compromising the procedure at this point, I think that we need to, as a committee, take a step back and say, okay, how do we proceed? How do we make sure we get the best candidate for this? That's my opinion. I would welcome and hope that the members that have been selected for this Blue Ribbon Committee and others participate and join in a public discussion right here in the City Council chamber, or in the in the chamber.
Okay, Mr. Gendron, then Ms. Scott. Mr. Gendron? Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Scott?
Thank you. I have a few concerns with substituting the process at this point in time. One, we have 3 alleged candidates that were reported in the Lowell Sun. I have not been told who the candidates are. I mean, it's been reported in the newspaper, but we don't know that the process has been compromised at all. I don't even know if it's true. 2, the family members that work in this district that applied, the employees may have told family members or friends that they're applying, and we hear about it. That's how rumors get started. I mean, we might just not hear about out-of-district candidates because they don't tell their family and friends that they're applying. So I don't see any reason to consider this a great conspiracy that it got out there that 3 candidates from inside are applying, and I don't see a need to change the process at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Rosikowicz?
And I just have one more thing to add to this. I mean, changing the process at this point, that just sends a message to all the candidates that are applying into our district for this position. They're watching us. They're probably watching us right now. And they're looking at us and they're saying, geez, do I really want to put myself through this? You know, so I wouldn't doubt if we change the process at this point in time that you start seeing more people withdraw their names from consideration. Just my feeling.
Mr. Gendron?
Thank you, Mr. Leary. So I think, you know, what the mayor has proposed is consistent with what my position has been all along, that these interviews should be public. You know, sometimes we have to debate and change paths. I'm not embarrassed by the fact that a governmental body has to, you know, debates and change paths. It's not too late. We haven't had a single interview yet. I think that if what the mayor is proposing, that we continue down the path of interviewing these folks, but we do it publicly with the school committee and the Blue Ribbon Committee, then, you know, I think that's what I was hoping to do all along, because I believe I think we should know about all the candidates, and I think they should be public. So I think we could very easily ask Mr. Gilbert to contact the candidates and say, look, school committee's changed paths. They want to do these interviews in the public. If that's going to be a problem for you, then you can drop out. But otherwise, same situation as before. And we bring them in, we interview them, and we make a decision. Maybe we pick 2 or 3 to make site visits. But I think we should interview all of them. I think we can do it, you know, in a couple of weeks' time, if we dedicate ourselves to bringing 1 or 2 in, you know, every other day over the next 2 weeks, we should easily be able to get through 10 interviews. You know, we can interview all of them. Or we can choose 5 of the 10 and interview them, whatever, you know, the committee decides they want to do. But I think it's the right thing to do, to make these interviews public. And, you know, if that's what the mayor's proposing, then I certainly support that.
Okay. Ms. Scott?
Just one more concern is that we did not commit to that when these people applied for this position. So these finalists, these 10 candidates, did not commit to an open process. So I'm not really sure, again, that we can change it midstream. We did do this vote. We had this vote at a prior session that we weren't going to move forward with this. And now, again, I think we're further along in the process, and we have candidates that are expecting confidentiality.
Mr. Gendron, please.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. So I think that's a good point. We should not release those folks' names and subject them to an open process unless they agree to it. So I think the process would be, if we decide to do this, is Mr. Gilbert's got to contact those folks and say, look, school committee's changing paths. They're going to make this a public and open process. Do you still want to continue? And if they do, they can come for the interview. If they don't, then, you know, they probably weren't a good candidate for the position anyways, because it's down to 10 candidates. If they want to be the superintendent of the Lowell Public Schools, you're going to have to put your name out there.
All right, there's a substitute motion on the floor. There's a second. Madam Clerk, please read the actual motion.
To change the process that the school committee receives the resumes and proceeds, and then the school committee makes the determination of the final 5 candidates in collaboration with the selection committee?
Okay. Mayor
Mr.
Elliott.
Vice Chair, just one other comment before we proceed. I don't think there's a conspiracy going on. I think the language I use is there is a breach in the release of information. Somebody leaked information to the newspaper. That compromises the process. And if anyone doesn't think so, whether it's legitimate or not, whether in district or not in district, one of the individuals does not live in the district. So I don't understand that train of thought. But it's incumbent upon, we are the elected people. We are the voice of the people at home. They entrust in us to speak up and bring forth what we feel is in their best interest. And the best interest is to have a public process, knowing that this is not going to be a public process. It's a private process. It's not going to be behind closed doors, as I don't think it should be to begin with. You apply for a position, you should realize, look, this is the way it is. It's a public, this isn't a private job. So I firmly believe that I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's reality that names get released, and that wasn't the intent at all whatsoever. So we have to move on, and we have to change for the betterment. So, move the question.
Okay, this is, yeah, Ms. Scott.
Sorry, just one more question for my colleagues, I guess. If we moved forward with this process and we make it public now to candidates that already applied, that expected confidentiality, and they decide not to move forward, would we now expect the Mass School Committees to backfill to that number of 10 again with candidates that they had already eliminated? Or if we only end up with 4 candidates that want to go public, I mean, is that where we start off from?
That's typically
So, Mayor Elliott, go ahead.
yeah, that's what, there's 22 candidates. It's not as if we have a shortage of them. If people want to back out, they back out.
Okay.
I don't think we just proceed in this direction despite the fact that this is a bad process at this point.
All right, I think,
Just to make a comment on that, I think that if, we have 10 candidates that met the criteria, if 3 of them back out and we only have 7 candidates, once it goes public, then I think we interview 7 candidates. I don't think we ask them to backfill. That would be my thought, is we don't ask them to backfill. We go through with, we have 10. Anybody who doesn't want to go public and wants to drop out, that's fine. But then we move forward with however many candidates we have remaining.
Is it fair to the 3 candidates
Mayor
who've had their...
Elliott, speak through the chair. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, we'll remember that, Mr.
Well, don't remember it.
Is it fair to the 3 candidates who got their name released that, the other 7 are remaining in confidence? I mean,
It's a question.
it's an issue.
I guess
It's just a rhetorical question. Motion move the question.
Okay, we've had a lot of debate. Let's really, I think it's,
I just said that it's an alleged, we don't even know if the inside candidates are candidates. It was something reported in the Lowell Sun that may or may not be true.
okay. So we've had dialogue. We have a substitute motion. We have a second. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Ross-Sikowicz? Ms. Scott?
No.
Mr. Conway?
No.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
3 yeas, 3 nays, motion fails.
Okay, the motion fails. Revert back to the original motion by Mr. Conway. Any further thing to discuss on that? Okay, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Leary?
No.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Ross-Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
No.
Mayor Elliott?
No.
3 yeas, 3 nays, the motion fails.
Do you wish to be recognized, Mr. Gendron? At all? Are you all set? Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Leary, I'd like to be recognized. I think that, I think I've made my position pretty clear in this situation, but I also feel as though I don't want to stunt this process. I think that Ms. Martin is not here tonight. Her position has been pretty firm regarding this, and I think that if we were to let this fail tonight, it would just delay the process and would probably end up doing the same process anyways, because I think it's fallen 4-3 here, now a 3rd time. So in light of that, I'd like to change my vote to yes, so that we can continue with the process.
So let the clerk reflect that Mr. Gendron changes his vote to yes, to the ayes will be 4-3. I believe that's the correct procedure, and the motion passes.
Well, I don't...
4-2, excuse me, 4-2, I apologize, not 4-3.
I don't disagree. We've come an awful long way, months. I mean, again, in January for this process to come to a screeching halt, and essentially that's what would happen. It would. I think Mr. Gendron's right. Ms. Martin has made it clear we can't think for her, but I don't want to see this process come to a halt at all whatsoever. I'm sure there are some good candidates. My point, I guess I made my point. I just feel, as an elected individual, I'd like to see them all. I've always wanted to see them all. So, in that interest, I think it's important to show that we are going to work together. We've had our disagreements. We don't all agree in this, but I agree that we should proceed with these individuals that have been nominated.
So you wish to, Mayor Elliott changes his vote from no to yes? Start erasing things. And in a form of unity, I will change my no vote to yes as well. So the ayes have a favor, 5 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, would you like your chair back?
Okay.
Just need a motion to accept it as a report of progress. All those a second by motion made by Mr. Gendron, seconded by the mayor. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Moving on to the next, we have another subcommittee. We have Joint Finance and Student Support Services Subcommittee report of the meeting of Monday, March 30th by Chairman Leary and Chairwoman Rosikowicz. Ladies before gentlemen.
Just by all means.
Okay, I'm just going to very briefly. It was a very short meeting. However, not unimportant at all, and I'm sure that Mr. Leary will chime in. This is a joint finance students in student support services subcommittee meeting which took place this past Monday, March 30th. Those in attendance were Chairperson James Leary, Kim Scott, and Student Support Services Chairperson myself, Dave Conway, and Kim Scott. School personnel present were Jay Lang, Janine Durkin, Karen Rochler, and that's it. So the number one topic, the only topic on the agenda, was the 2015 summer school options. Deputy Superintendent Lang reviewed the 9C cuts that were recently announced by the governor and how they impacted the funding for summer school programming, in particular for our middle schools and our special ed summer schools programming. Approximately $143,360 is the anticipated budget required to provide for the current promotion retention policy mandated summer school option for middle school students throughout the Lowell Public School District. Approximately $114,280 has been eliminated through 9C budget reductions. We reviewed alternative options for the school committee to consider instead of providing the traditional summer school program, which lasts approximately 4 weeks through the summer, and the anticipated cost for the alternative proposals does not exceed $30,000. The alternative proposal, as it was explained, and I'm sure that Ms. Durkin would shed some further light on the initiative, is to actually provide opportunity for students who are failing one or more classes in middle school to actually have an opportunity to make up those grades through after-school tutoring, after-school learning, also Saturdays, vacations, and really doing it within the school year rather than deferring that to the summer. I think I encapsulated everything. And actually, when you looked at, there was a real discussion about, what's the value of our having a 4-week program in the summer versus having a more condensed program in the middle of or at the end of the school year to really afford those children the opportunity to be tutored and schooled, educated by people who are familiar to them, educators that know them, they know those educators. It's in the schools that they're very familiar with, rather than going to, say, the Stoklosa, where we have historically held our middle school summer programming. So I think that's it in a nutshell, but there is a motion to recommend to the full school committee that an alternative summer school option be recommended for approval, and the current promotion retention policy be modified to recognize the alternative option for the 2014-15 school year.
Okay, motion to make a recommendation. Do you have that, Madam Clerk? Yes, okay. I won't reiterate the entire motion because I probably can't remember it anyway, but motion to proceed with by Ms. Rasikowicz, second by Ms. Scott. Requires a roll call, so why don't I? Motion to recommend to full school committee that the alternative summer program option be recommended for approval, and the current promotion retention policy be modified to recognize the alternative option for the 2014-2015 school year. Motion made, second by Ms. Scott. Roll call.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
I'm sorry, Mr. Leary, as the chair, did you want to be recognized on that as well?
I'm just basking in the glow of taking your place a minute ago, so I think I'm all done. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll do that every meeting. Okay, entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file by Mr. Leary, second by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed motion carries. Moving on to the reports of the superintendent. First report, we have revised 2015-2016 school calendar. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I regret to inform you that I made an error. I counted the half day before Thanksgiving as we didn't count it, so you picked up an extra day. So I just wanted to change it officially. So the last day of school will be June 15th. It was supposed to be the 16th, so I made an error. So I just wanted to, one day earlier anyway, for your review and approval.
Okay. Motion to approve, move to approve by Ms. Rossigo, second by Ms. Scott. Roll call.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Next item on the agenda, report of the superintendent. We have a preschool expansion grant update. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier in the year, I informed the committee that our district is one of 5 urban districts across the state that had received the preschool expansion grant over time. That means that over the next 4 years, $2,850,000 will come to Lowell. That will give us 156 slots of additional pre-K slots with our community partners, Community Teamwork and Little Sprouts, who are our partners as identified by the Office of Early Education and Care. It is a specific calling. It's children who have never had preschool experience. They're not going to have that opportunity. This is another opportunity for them, and they are at or below the 200% of the federal poverty level. There are other risk factors involved: homelessness, children who speak English as a second language, and perhaps children who may be in early intervention with special needs. As we look at the planning, the very important part of this planning is it's really extending our program quality. It's going to give access to 156 more children, but it also is going to have program quality of working collaboratively with our community partners on designing this program. The Office of Student Support Services, Ms. Durkin, along with the Office of Early Childhood, Ms. O'Neill and Ms. Murphy, have worked really in a very detailed fashion with our partners, both Community Teamwork and Little Sprouts, in designing a program that will be the best that we can provide to young people. But this is the planning processes, and I just wanted to keep you informed of the progress of this particular project. You may have read that I did report out at the State House yesterday morning as the only superintendent that they've called upon, and it's good news. We won't be happy until 565 of our children had no preschool this year. The class of 2028, there are 1,300 kindergarteners, and 575 or 65 of them did not have preschool before they came to us this September. And so the gap continues, and this is one way to help fill that gap, but the work, again, is not done yet, as the other issues we've discussed this evening.
Just, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Larry?
One, I want to thank you for being a leader in this area, and thank you and congratulations to you. It's a tribute to you and your career by being the leader in this, and I think, your last 40 days counting, this is a really a positive light in what you've done for the Lowell Public Schools, and education in general, and serving urban education. I appreciate that, and I want to definitely congratulate you and notice you for a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larry. Further discussion on this motion? Excuse me, I will entertain a motion to accept this report as a report of progress and place on file by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Next report, school security options report. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Conway had put in a motion to ask me to work with the Chief of Police to discuss the merit and feasibility of installing the shooter protection system. And you may have recalled at that particular time that I reported to you that the police chief, William Taylor, had told us that they were looking into many different options. Since that time, our response team, which is a phenomenal group of people led by our assistant superintendent, have looked into different products to give you some information about products that are really stellar in the market. So I am going to ask Assistant Superintendent Durkin, who has been a part of these meetings with our law enforcement as well as other officials, and she can give you more information about particular products that have been reviewed.
Ms. Durkin?
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Regarding the investigation that we have done with our crisis team, which is inclusive of our police department, fire department, EMS, health department, and school officials, we looked at 3 separate crisis notification options as well as 2 prevention options. So I'll give you a brief synopsis of those options this evening. One of those options is the Guardian Active Shooter Detection System, and that particular option, what it does is it's triggered by the sound of gunfire. So it sends an alert directly to the police department within seconds of the sound of gunfire. This technology would cost us as a district anywhere between $20,000 and $100,000 for each school building, depending on the size of the school building, with, of course, Lowell High School being on the much higher end of this system. The challenge that our district committee looked at with this option is that it only recognizes gunshots. It does not alert, it doesn't alert for knives, it doesn't alert for other weapons or particular threats. So that was one of the systems we reviewed. The other system was the direct-to-responder system, and this system was recently initiated in at Burlington High School. And this system actually has a panic button system where if that panic button was pressed in a school building, that it would immediately alert the police, and it would simultaneously send out a code blue response to all of the school system. As you know, this past year, we have initiated options-based response in our system, and then we could actually tailor this to alert our staff to activate the options-based response at the same time that the police department were receiving this information. This would range in cost between $15,000 and $20,000 per school, depending, again, on the size of the school. And it's a one-time cost, which doesn't include the cost of the radios, which we would have to also purchase because it's directly linked to the police radios and the scanner systems. The third system was COP Sync 911, and that system is used on mobile devices. We could use it on our computers, use it on cell phones, and as staff could have the ability to hit that system and again activate within an instant to the police department. This also alerts dispatch, police cruisers, the local, to come on the scene quickly. That cost of that system's approximately between $2,400 for the high school and $1,200 for each additional school. Then we also looked at prevention options. There were two prevention options. They're social mining software tools. One is Geophidia and the other is Social Centennial. Both of those systems actually create virtual maps around we could create a virtual map around Lowell High School, around the Bailey School, around the Daly. And what that does, it actually monitors all the Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and it monitors those systems for selected key criteria that we would program in. So if we wanted to search threats to the school, if we wanted to search, talk online about guns and weapons being brought into the school. That cost ranges from about $14,500 to $16,000 per year. So there's an annual fee. The other programs are, the COP Sync does have a yearly upgrade, but the direct-to-responder is a one-time fee with just the charges and things that go along with it. As a committee, we looked at all of these systems and felt we actually spoke with the chief of police and a deputy on all of these systems, and we would recommend the direct-to-responder system and the threat alert system, the COP Sync. Rationale for that is it provides that instant contact to the police, and it doesn't require additional monitoring for our staff. The fear for our staff on the prevention options, although they're very good and they have some really wonderful ability, we'd have to designate individuals to really mine those in each of our buildings on a daily basis. So with the actual direct-to-responder system, we would go with that system if it weren't, if the funding was available. That would be our first choice, and the second choice would be the COP Sync, which does a very similar service for our schools in responding to the police. And I really want to thank the two people that pulled together all of this data. Our committee members visited different sites, reviewed all of these options, but Sergeant Peasley and Lowell High School Discipline Operations Specialist Roxanne Howe for providing the report.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the effort and the energy and the time that's put into that report. I think it's extremely important, and going back a few weeks ago, I happened to just hear about that particular system. I believe it was in Methuen.
It's in Methuen.
Methuen, and that really sparked my attention was the fact it didn't cost anything. And it was put into I believe it was Methuen High, and I don't know if it was on a trial, if it was something that a company was promotional, but I think that having said that, the most important thing that we have to look at going forward is that we're always trying to make the schools as safe as we possibly can for all the children and the staff. So that's why I think it's good that group meets periodically, because again, there's always different methods and different procedures that we could examine that might make things better for us. And I think the talk, the discussion is extremely important. I think what going forward, and again, I appreciate the information. There's a lot of information for the school committee to understand at this particular time. And my suggestion would be that we take this information, we put it into a subcommittee on, let's say, safety, and let's examine that. Maybe bring some of those participants like we did before forward and explain a little bit more detail exactly what these different methods, how they can help the schools out. And then at that particular point, then we have to then decide whether we can afford it, whether it's if it's something that makes sense at this particular time, or do we do it in phases? That's something that needs to be discussed. However, I would recommend that it's done prior to our discussions on the budget, so that we have that information going forward. But again, thank you very much for that report.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Mr. Conway. Certainly, making our schools safe has got to be of primary importance. I just had a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Durkin about the options that you proposed. The COP Sync, is that the panic button?
No, that's the D2R, the direct to responder system, is the panic button.
Okay, and you're not recommending that?
No, we are recommending that because that system not only alerts the police, but it simultaneously sends an alert throughout the building. You can actually create alerts that it sounds like police are on the scene at that moment. And what they showed was that within minutes, there were police there on call. So we had demonstrations. We'd be willing to call in some of those providers and have them share those systems with you. The COP Sync is also a good, lesser costly service. It does the alert to the police.
Okay. And you talked about a system that monitored online traffic, like texting and Facebook and social media?
Yes.
Wow. So can you do that?
They actually create virtual maps, and we watched it happening.
Wow.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. It is a great report. I agree with my colleague that it would require, I think, a little more investigation than what we can do here on the floor. So maybe a subcommittee would be a good, appropriate tack.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Mr.
a couple other questions through you to Ms. Durkin. Where is it being, the system that you're recommending right now, or that group is recommending, where is that being used today around here?
It's actually being used nationally in hospitals, and they're now just venturing out into schools.
All right, so that particular system is not in any schools around here, is that correct?
Not locally at this point.
Okay. And in your discussions, because I would like to get some...
I apologize. There's so many that we reviewed. That one is in the Burlington Public Schools, and that is the one that 3 of our members actually went out to the Burlington Public Schools and saw it in action.
Okay, all right, good. And the last question is, are there any grants that, I know the police department go after a lot of grants, and would any of these systems fit into that category where we could perhaps look at grant money through the police department?
We have been talking with the police department, and right now they're looking at the grants that are out there, and we're hopeful that there might be something, but at this time there isn't anything at present that would fund these.
In Burlington, was there any grant money in Burlington, or was it just funded directly through the budget, do you know?
They did it through the budget. It was something that they did as a result of a safety audit that they had conducted in their schools.
Okay, thank you very much.
Further discussion on this report? Seeing none, entertain a motion to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file by Mr. Conway, second by Mr. Generin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Next report of the evening, we have Community Service Month update. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, this is the day that we have planned on May 26th. This is a report from Ms. Abrams, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, talking about what elementary students will do. They'll decorate grocery bags. There'll be a community service theme. We will display some of that in our Family Resource Center, which will be on Merrimack Street by that particular time. Middle schoolers will have gardens. There's gardens all over town that are coming. We'll visit the community on that particular day. Lowell High will be continuing their community service through the 21st century, and they're going to be having a whole activity day that particular day itself. We are also looking towards having a parade at that particular location, and so that's just what we have planned at this particular time.
Motion to place the report on file, Mr. Mayor.
Motion by Mr. Generin, second by Mr. Leary to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Next report of the evening, Civics Day. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is more information on Civics Day, which will be June 2nd, 2015. This is the second annual Civics Day, where third grade students all come to downtown Lowell, and they really participate in the different areas that our city has to offer, one being City Hall. And so they'll be giving examples of our community. They will look at different ways people can influence their local community. We will have interactive Civics Day. They'll be going to the historical park. They'll be going to UMass Lowell. They'll be in this plaza right around us. And they'll see there's a really very detailed kind of stations. They'll go on the trolley, all kinds of things. It's the second time we're doing that. So I want to thank Assistant Superintendent Abrams, but especially Martha Cohn, who is the coordinator of Social Studies and Science, who has had us do this for the second year.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Ms. Scott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to take a minute to thank the superintendent and the assistant superintendent and Marty Cohen for putting this on. Also for the science fair, that they spent so much work doing these, unique hands-on activities for children, and it's just wonderful to see. Last year, I came to see the Civics Day to watch the students. A lot of them talked about how they want to go to UMass Lowell now because that was a big hit. They were showing how to vote. They had a voting booth, an old-fashioned voting booth, set up outside. The kids thought that was the best thing ever. And they were questioning Connor Baldwin in here, asking them how to get their streets fixed at home. So, it was a great day, and I'm just very thankful that it's happening again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. General?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to chime in also on the science fair. Went up there with some of the other members and was a judge, and what a great event. Lowell High School cafeteria filled, lots of great ideas and great projects. I looked at one on desalination of water. These girls were tremendous. They talked about the challenges around desalination and the challenges of the reducing water supply, so really good stuff.
Thank you, Mr. General. Further discussion? Motion to accept the report as a report of progress and place on file by Ms. Ross-Sikowitz, second by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion passes. Item number 28 has already been taken up earlier in the meeting. We have 4 conference requests. Entertain a motion to take all 4 conferences together by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gendron. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Motion to approve all 4 requests for conference trip requests. Motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Ms. Ross Sikowicz. All those, roll call.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent, approved.
Last motion of the evening, which was delayed from the special order of business, is a special meeting. It's an executive session. Update on progress of negotiations, UTL, LSSA, SEIU, litigation, and collective bargaining immediately following the regularly scheduled school committee meeting. Entertain a motion to go into executive session by Mr. Gendron, seconded by Ms. Scott, at which time I'd also like to entertain a motion that we will adjourn from that executive session into open meeting. Motion made and seconded by Ms. Ross Sikowicz, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Roll call on the motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin? Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Mr. Gendron?
Yes.
Mayor Elliott?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 absent.
Motion passes. We will go into executive session and adjourn from that meeting. It is, but it wasn't. It's all yours.